Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty for April the 7th, 2023. It is Good Friday for those of you who celebrate that. And it is episode number 97. So we are going to talk principally today about, we're going to revisit Lucey, see how she's doing today. We haven't talked about Lucey in a while. But before we get to that, let's just take a look at works in process or progress, works in progress. That's the word I want. Yep, that's it. So I just finished this morning. This is my what I called Canada Day Maple Leaf Log Cabin Quilt. That's what it's called. This is a Chelsea Stratton design, and I decided to do it in Canadian theme. I really fell in love with this pattern when I saw it because it's got a maple leaf on it, and I love all things with maple leaves on them and stars. So I thought this would make a really cool looking Canada Day quilt. It hasn't been quilted yet. I just finished the top this morning, but I think it turned out pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Yeah, it looks very nice. Okay, good.
I don't see any mistakes.
No, there aren't any. You won't find any. Stare all you want. You won't find any. He'll look, though. He will try. Okay, so that's what I've been up to. And what have you been up to?
Well, I've been madly working on this shirt. Well, actually not madly, but I have been working on the shirt. For Steve wanted bought marijuana fabric and he wanted a marijuana shirt. So
a weed shirt. It's my weed shirt.
And so I have done it. I just have to put the collar on, finish the button, and put the buttons on.
Ooh, and sleeves hemmed.
Yeah.
And
pocket on.
Pocket, the invisible pocket.
Well, it's almost invisible. I have black thread putting it together, so there's extra thread to go too.
Of course, didn't you put a hole through one of the pieces?
Yeah, I accidentally put a hole through the. I usually serge the sleeves on, and it got underneath the serger, and it went through. It ate through one of the sleeves, which is okay because I could put the sleeve back on. If it ate through the body of the shirt, it would have been a bigger problem.
Okay, but it was still a mistake.
Yeah, well, that's the problem when you're serging stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's on a curve.
Oh, yeah. Excuses here. Excuses here. If I had done it, you know what I would be called? Oh, you're an idiot.
Yeah, well, anyway.
Well, that'll look very nice on me. Maybe it'll be done by the time we get to Vancouver. Of course, we don't know what the weather will be like in Vancouver. It may not be warm enough to wear short sleeves, but I'm kind of hoping it is. In fact, I may just wear short sleeves anyways, and I'll just have a jacket over top. Yeah. So, whatever. Okay, so we have some announcements. Yes, due to the fact that people have forced me to do this. Well, not really forced me, but they insisted that we have a pop-up.
Twisted your arm.
Twisted my arm, yeah. Have a pop-up sew day. So we are on Saturday, tomorrow. And of course, this is Easter weekend, so some people may be busy getting ready for whatever they do for Easter. But if you're not, then join us. I sent out the link to everybody that's on my mailing list, and the link is in the show notes of this below as well. I'm going to open up the Zoom link at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. We're talking April the 8th. And we'll sew until, or work away at it until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't have to be there for the whole thing. And if you come late, you come late. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be there right at the crack of 8 because, I know some of you that would be like 5 o'clock in the morning, wherever you are located across the world or later. So join us if you're free and you want to do something and, and something special. We're going to have prizes tomorrow. Little incentive there for you to come. However, well, that's all I'm going to say about the prizes, except for this. If you're not there, you can't win a prize. Okay? So that's all I'm going to say about it. All right. What else is happening? Update on the retreat. I have one spot that's just opened up. I don't have anybody on my waiting list at this point in time. So if you've been thinking about it but thought you couldn't get in, quickly send me an email saying you want on. I'll also will put people on the waiting list as well. But right now, I've had one person drop out, so I have a available spot right now. Okay. Now, Sunday is usually our live, but Sunday is Easter Sunday, and we are going to my sister's for dinner. and she wants us over at her place at about 4:30, which means we have to leave a little bit after 4 o'clock here. So guess what? Stephen and Walter Live will be on the air. We're not canceling it, but we'll be on 1 hour earlier. We'll be on at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as opposed to our usual time of 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're only going to be running probably about an hour as well, instead of the usual 90 minutes that we usually do for that. So that's this Sunday, Easter Sunday. We'll be on 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, now that brings up another thing about videos. I will have my usual videos next week, like my vlog and the Idiot Quilter, and I do believe I have one more interview to put up as well. Then I'm out of interviews. But so Chatty probably will not happen next Friday because we are going at some point next Friday. We're driving to the airport in Toronto because we've got a hotel room for overnight at the airport. So by the time we get all of our crap together and everything and that, there probably will not be, in fact, I'm pretty sure there's not going to be a So Chatty next Friday. We fly out next Saturday to Vancouver. So then on the Sunday, will there be a Stephen and Walter Live? Maybe, maybe not. I won't have my usual technology with me because I am not taking my laptop with me, but I am taking my iPad and I'll have my phone as well. And we may do something, but it won't be in the usual way. And also, times get screwed up because we will now be in the place of other people on the West Coast. So, yeah, don't know what's going to happen.
We'll have to do it early.
Yeah, we'd have to do it early. Well, no, we'd have to do it later. No, we'd have to do it. Yeah, we'd have to do it earlier. Yeah, that's right. If it goes live, I have no idea. There's so many things depending on that, and because we don't know what our internet connection is going to be like, all that kind of stuff. I do plan to do some videos while we're away. They will not be the usual or on the usual days or anything like that. They will be probably shorter videos. They may be ones that I'll do about what we've seen while we're out there, things like that. Some video that I may capture when we're out and about. I have no idea. So just make sure you've got that you're subscribed to the channel and that you've got the little bell icon clicked to receive all notifications of when something goes up. As
Actually, when I say we do it earlier, we would do it earlier the time that we're
for us, not
for us, but your times would remain the same.
if we actually did a Stephen and Walter Live and want to keep it to the Eastern Time Zone time of 4 p.m., it would mean we would have to do it at 1 p.m. Vancouver time.
And that might be eating into our...
That might, yeah. So anyway,
we'll see.
The best thing you can do is just check the channel, but if you're not subscribed, subscribe, please, for it. You don't hear me say that very often, but I am saying it this time, okay? So if you're not subscribed, subscribe and click the bell icon to receive notifications when something goes up or something goes up live, because you never know what's going to happen. It's all an experiment. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, well, in a moment we're going to take you over into Lucey's room, and we thought it's a good idea to have a revisit with Lucey and what I have learned after, well, I've had Lucey now for what, a year and a half, I guess, and I've had the quilt path not quite a year yet, almost a year. Come next month, I think, would be a year that I've had that. And have I learned much? Yes, I have learned a lot of things. So we're going to talk about some of these things. Walter will be doing the camera work, but he'll also be putting in his 2 cents worth, of course, with that, and probably asking me questions that I can't answer. But we're going to talk about what I've learned, how I've learned it, and, you know, you might find this interesting, you might not. If you don't have a long arm, it might not mean as much to you. If you do have a long arm, you might know things better than I do. I don't know, but we're going to revisit Lucey. So we're going to do that right now.
All right.
Okay, so we're in Lucey room, and Walter can probably scan around and show you what Lucey room looks like. You have seen it before, but I don't do a lot of video in here because I really don't have the facility for it. And so anyways, you can see my pile of quilts, and that's not all of them. There's quilts in other rooms as well, but there's some of them. And this, of course, is Lucey. And you've heard me talk about Lucey many, many times, and you've seen her before. Now, what I've done is I've set up for demo purposes, but also because I'm working on my gnome scrap bag hangers, I need some more fabric for making those bags. So what I've done is I've taken some scrap backing fabric, some scrap batting, and scrap top fabric, and I've layered it all out on Lucey here. Now, I'm not going to explain how to do layering. It's kind of boring. But essentially, think of this like a quilt, only the quilt would be much bigger. So that brings me to a point that Walter and I have a contention about. And that contention is, does size matter with Lucey? This is a 10-foot frame. All right. I can do a queen size quilt on here. However, my maximum length is basically, you don't get a full 110 inches this way because you notice these little clamps that are here, they're on here to keep your fabric taut in a horizontal way. I mean, it's on here on the frame, which keeps it taut vertically, but horizontally you have those. So you have to have a little bit of extra batting and a little extra backing underneath the size of your quilt top. So if your quilt top is 108 inches, that only gives you 1 inch on either side. And you should have a minimum of about 4 inches on here. So it's tight when you're doing a quilt that big. Walter says I should have got the 12-foot.
Yeah, because at the time he could have gotten the 12-foot, it would have been the same price.
Yeah, but why didn't I get the 12-foot? Well, show around here. You have to be able to get around your machine. So you see, we have a workshop over here.
Yeah, I know, but according to the lady that sold you the machine, you could have butted the one end right up against the wall.
Yes, I could have, but I didn't want to because I wanted that
Well,
space
I think
over there.
for an extra 2 feet, you would have been able to squeeze it in.
That's what she said. Okay. And you've got to get around your machine as well. Now, of course, the width would still be the same.
Yeah.
The length there. Yes, I probably could have because we're talking 2 extra feet. So in a sense, only an extra foot on either end.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still felt it would feel cramped.
Yeah. Well.
However, this has not presented me with a problem.
Yes, it has.
It's not.
You had one quill on here that you said, "Oh, I could have used the extra room."
He just remembers everything, doesn't he?
Because even though you might not be doing a king size on here, right? You may have a very large queen size that you want to put on, and then you suddenly run out of room.
But on the rare occasion I might do that, and it would be very rare, I can always go down and rent time at Whirls and Swirls and do it on Tracy's machines.
Yes, you could, provided Tracy will be there forever. So,
you know, some people have a glass that's half full. Some people have one that's half empty, and Walter has one that just doesn't exist. So
okay. So anyway,
so size does matter. I guess the bottom line, what I've learned since having this machine, and this has not been a problem for me, with the exception of that one little time, and I still got it on here and it still worked fine, is that buy as big a machine as you can possibly afford. And
or
given the space that
you have. Yeah.
Yeah. Would I go less than 10 feet? No. No, definitely not. Because, well, I don't even think you can buy an APQS.
Oh yeah, you
machine.
could the APQS will start, I think, at 8.
No. Well, the reason I say, a lot of people would say, and depending on the price too, they go, well, I don't really need, I only make babies and lap quilts and small ones. I don't make big quilts anymore. However, wouldn't it be nice to have the option in case you do? Because there may come a time when it would be. So what I'm saying is buy the biggest machine you can afford and you can fit in your house at the time you buy a machine. Because you can't change it afterwards. because an APQS machine, now there are some machines that actually extend out. I think Genomi's will.
I mean, you could buy a new table, but that would probably cost you thousands of dollars.
Oh
So
yeah, it wouldn't be like, it's not just a couple $100.
yeah,
It's like 5,000-6,000 probably
probably yeah.
for that. And when we say table, we're talking about this thing down here. This is the table. This is
Well, no, what we're talking about is the whole thing with the rollers and everything.
Well, that's the frame.
The frame, yeah, that's
you
what we're
said
talking
table.
about. Well, I call it a table.
Well,
It's
no,
a frame.
That's the table.
No, the frame.
This is a frame.
Yeah.
This is a table.
The frame would have to extend because it has to run across the
Yeah,
rails.
Okay, fine. Say what you mean.
Okay, fine.
Fine. Anyways, yeah, because this frame is all one piece.
Yeah.
Essentially, it doesn't come. Well, it did come apart, but it's all bolted in. Now you can get some machines by other companies that have like, they'll extend out like from 4 feet to 8 feet or to 10 feet, but then you've got a break. These are solid. This is what's holding your quilt. This is solid. This is one piece of steel.
Yeah, and actually the APQS one, the ones we were looking at and other ones, have a very solid frame.
Yeah, and well, this sucker weighs a ton. Well, the whole thing, when it came to us, it came in 7 boxes on a transport right on our street, and it weighs 700 pounds.
Yeah.
In total for those boxes. So we know.
And Lucey only weighs about 40 some odd pounds. So
what only weighs?
Lucey.
What?
Lucey the machine.
The machine, yeah.
The machine only weighs about 40 some odd pounds. So the rest of that weight is all frame.
Is frame. But it's very solidly built frame. And if you have something where you had to extend it out, which is what the point I was trying to get to, you're going to have weak spots
Yeah.
in it, because where the pieces slide into each other to extend it. So bottom line is, size matters. Buy the biggest thing you can possibly get in your house and you can afford. Okay, what else have I learned from all of this?
Well, have you learned that having like the Lucey is a 26-inch deep throat?
Oh, yeah.
Have you learned that's a good thing to have?
Yes. Another thing, deeper the throat, the better. There's a joke in there. Deep throat. This is 26 inches from that back part up to this back part here. Well, actually, I think they technically do it from the needle, center of the needle to the back. But why do you want it bigger? A lot of the machines are smaller than that. They'll have like a 16-inch. Some will even have a 14. If you get one of those Grace frames where you load your sewing machine onto it, well, your throat is only the size of how much space you have in a throat on your sewing machine.
Yeah, and the fact that you've got a 26-inch throat doesn't mean that you have 26 inches of quilting room.
That's what I was getting to. Because you see the quilt's rolled up here right now. This is just one little twist on it, but you have your whole quilt coming down here, and as you move the quilt, your roll up here is going to get bigger. So you see, if it's going to fill this space in very quickly. So you don't actually have the full 26 inches of this throat to quilt in, because every time you roll this, you're losing
you only have whatever is in between the two rollers.
Yeah, basically. So so that's another consideration when you're buying a long.
Yeah, so if you're buying like a little Grace frame or something, and even if you have a machine that has a 12 or 13-inch throat, you still won't get that much quilting space out of it.
The other thing too is, I mean, there'll be some of you out there won't like me saying this, but I wouldn't waste my money on a Grace frame, or there's a couple of other companies that have these little tabletop kind of quilting machines, and here's why. You have this much frame. Okay, that's how much quilt you're going to be able to quilt width of that on some of those. That means, how do you quilt the rest of your quilt? Well, you've got to take it off. You've got to move
that
it
might
down.
be okay for somebody that only does table runners and.
Well, yeah, for table runners, but awful lot of money to quilt table runners when you can quilt those on your domestic machine. And you won't have enough throat, so you'll get one row of stitching across, and then you got to wind it. And on those cheaper machines like a Grace frame, they don't have this machine has an automatic winder on it. Other machines have like a crank kind of a thing. But
those machines, the smaller frames don't actually, the what do you call it?
They
The
don't roll.
spindles actually roll. You end up having to move the whole.
You have to move them across. That's what I was getting to as well. You have to slide it across. So I would say, don't waste your money on those things.
I think you'd get frustrated.
I think you get frustrated very quickly. And from what I've heard on YouTube, and people have gotten them, I've heard a few months later they've traded it in for something else, or they've gone to that. Of course, there's the sit-down models, the mid-arm as they call them, like the Q21 or Q26, whatever they call it, from Bernina and stuff like that, which is basically your sewing machine set sideways, and it has a big table. Well, you're moving the quilt manually under all of that. So yes, you have a bigger throat, and you have it's probably easier than using your domestic machine, but they're not cheap. They're $10,000 to $12,000. This one, by the way, everything you see here is $40,000. Okay, so
Canadian,
yeah.
so
For
about 30,000 American.
Yeah. So expensive, but well worth it. I love my Lucey. When she cooperates, we've had words. Okay. The other thing too, when you're buying a machine, I would strongly suggest is look at what the upgrades are. There are upgrades on this machine, and at the time we bought it, that was a good price because they threw in some things. For example, if you look here at the table, this is how the arm goes up and down. And right now, I can't do that because my carriage is locked as I have it in place for where I want to go. But this just slides, it glides up and down on here. But this is the deluxe table. It uses a bearing system.
No, they have it's a deluxe movement system called the Bliss system.
Yeah.
Which is using ball bearings instead of wheels.
Yeah, it doesn't have wheels. It has ball bearings, which are under here. And it glides very smoothly along. Now you're going to say, well, as long as it moves, it's okay. Well, no. This part, Walter told you, is 40 pounds or more, actually. But when you're moving around, if you're doing free motion quilting and you're moving this head around, you want really smooth action because it makes it easier. I could take 2 fingers if I had this released. I could take 2 fingers and move this. You can't necessarily do that with ones that are just on wheels. It's going to take more effort. Now, if you've got problems in your arms, your hands, and that kind of stuff, you've got arthritis or something like that, that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, and the track itself was an additional $1,000.
Yeah, with it. Another upgrade I got was an automatic winder. There's a motor on here, and there's switches, and there's a foot pedal. And when I want to advance the quilt, I just turn on the switch, and it does it for me automatically. That's an upgrade. You can get this model with a crank on it or wheels. See, like down here, they have the wheels. This part isn't automatic, but it doesn't matter. This is the one that runs it. It makes a difference. It really does, because you get more precision with this because it's all set up to put your quilt on, like make it a little bit more straight.
Except, when you got it though, you bought the Lucey on sale, and the upgrade came with the automatic advance.
Yeah. But there was a special deal happening at that time, so watch for specials.
And it may not look like it would be worth this much, but I think the price for this is about $1,600. An addition for $1,600 US.
Yeah,
for the addition.
And the Bliss track
is 1,000, and I think right now it's something like $1,200 or $1,300 for the Bliss track.
Yeah, so you see these things all add up. Okay, so the bottom line is figure out exactly what you want and get that. And if you can get upgrades, get the upgrades now, because I could add the motor to this after. But like Walter said, $1,600 for it at the time, and that price is only going to go up. It's not.
I mean, the motor you can add yourself afterwards, but the Bliss track you can't.
No.
And if you want an upgraded table, obviously you can't add it. You can add it later, but it would end up costing you an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah, and another kind of table you can have too is one that has an actual hydraulic lift system for lifting everything up and getting it the right level. This does not. This one didn't come with that.
However, that really is more for if multiple people are using the table. So
it's not as important. They have legs on the bottom that level. down there. Just show down here. See the screws on this on the leg? That's how we leveled it, because you do have to level it. And that also adjusts the height, because right now I have it at a height that's comfortable for me. They say basically your height should be, you see my hands? My arms should be pretty much at 90-degree angle. And it's close, but I find this very comfortable in the position. So you have to play around with that. Okay, so another thing too that you might want to do when you get your long arms, take classes on how to use it. And your dealer will probably offer you classes for it, probably as part of the package. Mine did. It didn't cost me anything extra. And she took me through the whole thing, basically setting it up, how to get your quilt on, do what you needed to do with it. I knew most of that stuff already because I had taken some other courses with Tracy at Whirls and Swirls where I got it. And I had rented time on her long arms, which are the same long arms. She was an APQS dealer, so I knew how to do all of that. But it didn't hurt. And as you're going to hear here in a minute, there's always something to learn. Okay, so some other things about setting up your room. Okay, down here on the floor, this is a concrete floor. I've got sort of it's not that padded, but you do want something under your feet because you're going to be standing in front of your long arm for a long time. Even with the quilt path, the computerized system, you're going to have to be here because Lucey, when you turn your back on her, now you might wonder why I call it Lucey, because it's called Lucey. That's the model.
Yeah, Juicy Lucy.
Yeah, Juicy Lucey. She's got her name right on there as well. So that's why she's called Lucey. Lucey sometimes doesn't like it if you leave her alone. Just everything's working fine. And then you go leave her for 2 minutes and you come back and there's been a thread break or something else. So you need to keep an eye on it. And so you're going to be standing here for a while. The quilt I did last week, which was a really large quilt, I was standing in front of Lucey for over 6 hours.
Now, mind you, you're saying standing over Lucy for 6 hours. You're saying that you're not actually quilting it yourself.
No.
You're using the automated system to
That's
quilt
right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were doing it free motion, if you're taking these hands...
I mean, if you were doing it free motion, you wouldn't be leaving your machine.
Well, no. Because it wouldn't get anything done.
No, so some people might be confused when they say, well, you're going to walk out and Lucy breaks the thread.
Yeah, I'm talking
well, you're
about
talking
the
about when
system.
you're using the automated
I'm talking
system.
about this part here that we'll come to, the quilt path. Yeah. So you want something that's, because your back's going to get sore. If it's concrete floor, it's in your basement like this is. It's kind of cold as well. This does okay now. Maybe someday I'll invest in something a little bit more cushy. I wouldn't mind something a little more cushy than this. But definitely the bare concrete. This is a far cry from just being on bare concrete. All right, what else do I want to talk about? Okay, you want to educate yourself, watch YouTube. I still watch YouTube videos all the time about long arming because I've learned something all the time about it. Now, keep your equipment, your scissors, your tweezers, everything handy. My scissors and my tweezers are right here. Now, isn't that nice they put a post here for you to do that? No, that's not what the post is for. That's for mounting a laser light up here because you can sometimes, you usually have, if you're doing a paper pantograph, which come on rolls like this, before I got the quilt path, I was using these. They have a pattern on. They spread out on that table. That's
spread out on the table in the back here.
And you basically have a laser light. The laser light is not on it right now. And the laser light points onto the pattern. And you drag it around.
Where all these red things are, the pattern would be laying there, yeah.
Yeah. And you have handles at the back. And you're quilting from the back of the machine. So you're following the pattern on this long scroll of paper, but your needle is doing what you're following there on top of your quilt. And that is the one way that many people do their quilting on a long arm. Because if they're not comfortable with doing free motion with it, and most people when you first get started on this are not.
And you don't want to go to the expense of getting the automation.
Yeah, so that's how you would do your quilts, is with that. So there is a way you can put a laser light on here. I've never tried it. there's some techniques for that as well, but that post is there. So what most people do is what I do. They put their tweezers, they put their snips right there. Keeps them always handy because you don't want to be running around looking for your scissors and stuff.
Yeah. Or your thread pick.
No, your thread pick. And anything that's associated with Lucey is in this room. What's that?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Okay, he's being funny because I couldn't find my thread picker. He's talking about this little device right.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Right here. It's for if you make some mistakes in your quilting, it's to get you under the stitches because these stitches are not easy to get out once they're in. And well, we had a little problem and I couldn't find mine. I had to buy another one and then I found it as soon as I came home. I remembered where I put it. I put it someplace safe. This is where it's safe. Okay. But you want to keep your equipment in the room, okay? Close to your long arm. Now, what a lot of people do is if you look here, this is my crappy storage for now. I have drawers underneath, Lucey, garbage can, things like that. What I want to get is those IKEA shell drawer units because they'll fit right under this very nicely. I just haven't got around to ordering them yet.
And you're also using part of the back here for batting storage.
Because I buy my batting by the roll. And so, yeah, it's kept there. So there is storage underneath. What about thread? Show them. This is my thread. This is the thread I use. It's Glide. It's my brand of choice that I use for quilting. I have my bobbins up above there for all of that. And I have some other specialty threads as well, like variegated and some other brands too. But I have them all displayed out here because I don't have to go hunting for it when I want a color. And you'll notice that for the most part, they're in rainbow order. And they look pretty. They're very pretty, all of them. And then I have miscellaneous other crap piled up in here too that have different things in it that you need with Lucey. Another thing you need to be aware of is you got to keep your machine clean. Now, this is going to be a problem for some of you because some of you don't keep your sewing machines clean, do you? You've heard us talk about this, how important it is to keep your sewing machine clean. Well, it's even more important to keep your long arm clean. And they're easy to clean. The bobbin is under here. Just bring the camera over and we'll take a little peek under here. So we're going down. Your bobbin's right back there. Now, of course, this whole unit comes forward so you can get at the bobbin, but right now I have it, as I said, I've got my track locked or my needle locked. But you push that in or pull it out and you put your bobbin inside that case and away you go. But you got to keep that part clean. And so how do you do that? Well, you need to blow some air into it. So some people use canned air. But just like canned air for your domestic sewing machine, there's a lot of controversy about using it because of moisture and things like that. Now, there are portable air things you can buy. I've got one. But we went industrial. We got a compressor that sits over here. I don't have to pull it out. It's all plugged in. I just turn it on, and I can come over with the nozzle, and I can blow Lucey out. With there, and then you have to oil it, and it's not to clean Lucey. It only takes 10 minutes at the most. I clean Lucey after every quilt because you wouldn't believe the amount of fuzz from your batting and other stuff, and that will throw your long arm off. Ask me how I know. In fact, I have a maintenance chart. I keep up there the numbers. I put the dates on. Those are all the components that I need to clean. Now, not everything has to be cleaned or oiled every time. So that's why you see dates missing on there. But I know when to replace my needle.
Yeah, because when you don't clean it, it starts skipping stitches and it starts breaking the thread.
And your thread will start to break as well. These machines are temperamental, okay? If you don't keep it clean, you're adding to your aggravation. There's enough aggravation at times with them until you get really used to it that you don't need to have something more to worry about. So clean it. Clean, 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 clean. Clean's very important. And you got to clean the tracks. These are the tracks. This is what the carriage runs across. You just go over it with a little rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. I do that at the same time as I'm cleaning the main part out as well, because dirt easily goes onto it. This room gets very dusty. It's like your sewing room. You don't see it, but because you're punching through batting and this, there is stuff all over the place. What are you looking at in the corner? What?
Done.
Oh, okay, fine. Can't get good help. All right. What else am I going to talk about? You want to invest in really good scissors. These are Koi's. These are great scissors. Yes, they are expensive, but you want sharp scissors because you'll need to cut thread a lot, and your thread will unravel. Because usually it's several plies, and so you need sharp scissors. If you cut it with the dull scissors, they'll start to unply and then or unravel, and then you can't get it through where you have to go in the threading. But yeah, these are my new toy. Batting scissors. Now these are a lethal weapon. Look at that. And these suckers are sharp, but they cut through batting like it's butter, and you want something like that. Now there are other scissors you can buy that are kind of square at the bottom, which are good too, but I have a pair of those, but they went dull very quickly. And yeah, maybe I can get them sharpened somewhere. Finding a good place to get your scissors sharpened is not easy. This company that I buy my scissors from is called LDH. They're in Toronto, and they actually have a sharpening service as well. I can send them to them, and they'll sharpen my scissors whenever I need them to be sharpened for, I don't know how much they charge. I think $20 or something like that. Okay, so what else do I want to talk about? What do long arms I have found not like? What's going to give you problems? Okay, quilts are made up of seams, right? Lots and lots of seams. And you always hear people talking about making sure your seams are flat. All right? That's very important on a long arm, because you've got this up here, it's stretched out. Your needle's going to go across, and it's going to hit intersections. It's going to hit bumps. And most of the time, you're not going to have a problem because that needle's going to go right through because it's high power. However, sometimes it might not. It can cause a thread break. So keep your seams, pressing your pieces, your patchwork properly is very important when it comes to being on a long arm. Another thing is, you don't want your seams to open up. Ask me how I know. You know, you've sewn a seam and you thought it was secured at the time in the quilt. Then it gets on here and you're stretching it. Well, you're not really stretching it, but you're pulling it taut. And then you look down halfway through while you're quilting and you go, oh crap, my seam opened up. What do you do then? You gotta hand sew it. I have curved needles that I use to get in there, but it's a pain in the butt unless you're an experienced hand sewer. I am not. So for me, it's disaster. And I've had that happen to me on more than one occasion. So I make really sure, now that I have a long arm, that my seams are well constructed.
So that would be important for somebody that sends their quilts to a long arm quilter to have quilted as well, to make sure that their seams, because we have heard stories of long arm quilters actually getting partway through the project and having to send the quilt back because of seams opening up.
Because of seams opening up. That's, yes, exactly. Another thing that's a real problem is some people like to piece backings. Well, you can do that. But if you can buy 108-inch wide backing fabric, so you don't have to put two pieces of fabric together, then that's, if it's going to be long arm, that's what professional long armers who do it as a business recommend, because there's less chance that there's going to be a problem when it comes to the quilting of
Well, not only that, somebody that would piece a backing for a quilt and they want to put it on a long arm would need a wider back than what would fit on top of the for the front of the quilt, because of the long arm process needs a extra
you got to
space.
have more out here on the edges with it, and that's why if you take it to a professional long armer, they will want you to have at least 4 to 6 inches of backing
Backing beyond the edge of
beyond
the
the edge
quilt.
of the quilt as well, because you see, you got to have the clamp it
Yeah.
down with it. And also, you want that much as well, not just because you couldn't clamp it up closer, but you see, there's a thing under here. I can't move that because I've got it locked. But if these are up here, there's the arm under here. It's
Yeah.
going to hit them.
The needle plate
Yeah,
is
the
underneath.
knee plate. Well, it'll hit. So you don't want that. If you do piece of backing, my recommendation is make sure, if you're just doing it with 2 pieces of fabric, regular fabric, I'm not talking about doing a patchwork backing, then when you sew it together, make your seam horizontal, not vertical. It's easier on the long arm machine to get over that than it is if it's a vertical. There's more chance of it pulling apart. How do I know? I don't. I haven't experienced that problem because I don't usually piece my backing, but I have seen things from professional long armers that really recommend that that's the best way to go, is to have a horizontal seam. Now, if you're going to piece your whole back, if you're going to do patchworking, then it's even more important that you keep your seams really flat. And there's debate whether or not you should press them open when you're doing that. Some people say yes, other people say they don't like that because they think it weakens the seam. So I don't know. That's a personal preference from it. Check with your long arm person if you're not doing it yourself. Okay. I talked about cleaning the machine, the backing fabric, batting. All right. Don't skimp on your batting. Use good quality batting, especially on a long arm, because there's got a lot of tension on this batting. And if you can put your fingers through it, and you can, even on the good quality, I could poke my finger through this batting right now if I really wanted to.
Well, isn't it true that a lot of people that do long arm quilting professionally insist on using their own batting?
Yes. And there's a reason for that. They know how their machine will behave if it's with their batting. Just like your sewing machine at home. Like your sewing machine at home, there are certain threads that you can't use. Your machine just doesn't like them for whatever reason. Well, it's the same with batting and with threads on a long arm. You have to get used to the machine. And so if your long armer says, I want to use my batting, I'll sell you my batting, it's not because they're trying to make more money. They're trying to make the end product look good. They're going to spend a lot of time, especially if they're doing customization. They're going to spend hours and hours working on your quilt, and you're paying for it, and you're paying a lot of money for a professional long armer to do your quilt. So yeah, go with what the long armer wants. I listen to my dealer for APQS, Tracy, has told me horror stories of people who've come in and she sits down and consults with them about what they want on their quilt and the whole bit. And they'll say they want this, they want that, and the other thing. And she will turn around from her experience and say, well, I don't think that's a good idea. Here is why. This might be better. But she's had some customers who've absolutely insisted. And there's been disaster, because they didn't go with what was recommended by the professional. So, work with them. If you spend all this time piecing a quilt together, then you want the final product to look good. So listen to what they have to say. They know what they're doing. Okay. So what's this device on here? This is the Quilt Path. You've heard me talk about before. It's the computerized system. I have this set up right now for 2 reasons. One, I've got it as a demo to show you. The other thing is I'm going to be using this that comes off it to make my little bags that go on my gnome scrap bag hangers that you've already seen because I've shown them to you before. There are certain things I have to do before I can start quilting. One is I have to tell the machine where to start, where to end, how big an area I have, and I'm not going to go through that. It's already been set up. The other thing I have to do is I have to pick my design, and I have to figure out, and you can see here on the screen, and that won't disappear yet, but I'm just leaving it because I'm set up here. I've already done a couple of rows. But you can see in behind here, this shows me what my pattern is and where it's going to fit on my quilt. This red line all the way around here, that represents the area of the quilt that you see here. That's right here. Okay. And if you notice, I've already done a little quilting here, and I have advanced the quilt. So it's already started rolling onto the back, and I'm about to do the next, what they call zone. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit more to this, but that's all I'm going to tell you right now. So this is all set up, ready to go. I've pulled up my bobbin thread, and now all I have to do is hit sew, and away it will go. It will lock my stitch. Now you hear a little beep in the background. That means my stitch regulator is on. If you suddenly hear it go, though, beep, 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 it means I have a thread break, and then the machine will stop. And then there's ways where I can get everything to go back to where it was, and when I get it rethreaded. Oh, this is it. But this shows you the path it's taking right now. So where the blue filled in, see there's traveling. And this screen gives me other information as well. It tells me how much thread it's going to use for this part you see here. It tells me how many stitches, individual stitches there are. And it shows me what percentage has been completed of this part of it. This is not the whole quilt, because you remember I have to advance it when it gets finished, this section. So it's going to go across here, it's going to come down, it's going to go across back this way. It's bi-directional. And when it gets down here to finish, then I go through a procedure where I wind the quilt ahead, and it shows me how much of the fabric I need to wind ahead to get the pattern so it interlocks. Now this is an edge-to-edge design that's happening here. And I'm just going to stop it for a minute so I don't have to talk over it. But I can do customization in that I can tell this machine that I want a certain pattern in a certain block. Now, I'm not going to go into and show you how to do that with this that I'm doing now, because that's a little bit more involved. But essentially what it is I take this and I move it around without it doing any sewing, and show it where a start point is, another point, another point, another point, which would be my block. I pick my pattern, and I set it up so that the machine says, okay, I'm going to quilt only in this area. Why do you want to do something like that? Well, let's say you wanted to put a different design in every block. You could do it that way. Let's say you had applique in it, and you didn't want to quilt over top of the applique because that was filling one of the blocks. So you could tell the machine to do an edge-to-edge design, but when it got to where the applique started, it would skip over it and carry on at the end. You might have a weird spot in a border that you need to customize to fit in because the quilt isn't perfectly square and that's throwing it off. So there's a lot of reasons. Or there might be too much pattern and not enough quilt left at the end. That's called an eclipse. So it can just say, okay, I only want you to quilt this much and stop. That's actually a new feature on this particular program, Quilt Path, that they just put in, that all quilters who've been doing this for a long time all went, oh yeah, they've been asking for that for a long time. I didn't understand what the excitement was until I've used it. Then I understand what they're talking about because it saves fabric and time. There are a lot of other things you can do with this Quilt Path as well. You can record your own. If you were a free motion quilter and you want to do your own design, you can set this up and do your design, your free motion, and it's recording it as you do it. Then it puts it into the machine, and now you can take that and do a little bit of editing and make it an edge-to-edge design, and the computer would take over then. So if you were doing something, a very elaborate feather design or something that you created yourself, but you didn't want to have to do it from one end of a quilt to the other.
Or you wanted to make it consistent and make it look like it was done the same each time.
Same way each time. So you could take that, edit it. So you might do this much on the quilt yourself, But now you take that, it's in the memory of the computer program, and then you edit it so you have a whole long line of it, and you save that all. It becomes your pantograph, and away you go with it. So you see that. Now, I've not tried that because I'm not a free motion quilter. Not good at it. I should practice more. You also can do ruler foot quilting on here as well, and there's an attachment, and I have it. It came with the machine. I have played with it a little bit, but I'm not, again, that's not something I'm into. I'm into this. I'm into having the computer do it for me. Now, what are some of the problems and things I've learned? Well, one of the things is if your bobbin, I used to fear when the bobbin would run out because you can't really tell.
Oh yeah, this machine doesn't have an indicator for when the bobbin runs out.
It does have a thread sensor when the thread breaks up here. This is the thread sensor, and it'll stop the machine. But it won't. If when your bobbin runs out, what happens is you can no longer loop your thread, of course, through because you don't have any bobbin thread. So that counts as a thread break, and the machine recognizes thread break. But you're kind of guessing how much bobbin thread you have. You're playing bobbin chicken, just like you play on your domestic machine. Except with this, it's a little bit more complex. So I'm sewing away here really nicely. My bobbin runs out. The machine goes and stops. Okay, thread break. So I look and go, oh, crap. I've probably run out of bobbin thread. So I got to lift up the quilt. I have to crawl under there, pull out the bobbin, see how much I have left. Then I have to put in a new bobbin, put this down, but my needle is not where it's supposed to be to pick up from the last stitch. So how do you do that? Well, that used to be a pain. I hadn't figured that out. One thing about manuals that come with your long arm, they're not good. They're like your sewing machine. So you have to figure this out on your own or take a course or watch YouTube videos. I now don't fear that. I know exactly, and it makes sense, but it didn't make sense before, exactly how to get my needle to the point where I want to start sewing again. So I don't worry about that anymore. 6 months ago, I would try to guesstimate how many rows I could do with what I had. And because I told you the numbers up here tell me length, well, approximately there's 2,600 inches of thread. Inches? No, feet. No, meters. No. Inches, yeah, inches. About 2,600 inches of thread on a bobbin. If this says, like right now it's saying to do this whole pattern that's on here, it's going to take 975 inches. So I know that approximately I can get maybe 3 passes or 3 zones with the one bobbin. So I would watch the machine, and if it got over to this part over here, it's easier for me to just stop the machine, pull the whole head over, replace the bobbin then. But I'd be wasting thread. That doesn't really bother me because they're not that expensive for bobbins. But, you know, you kind of look at it and you go, well, I've still got a third of a bobbin here. What do I do? Well, I just put in a new bobbin because it was easier. I don't worry about that now. I let it go right to the end of the bobbin. It comes up. It says, okay, you're out. It does a thread break. I can easily release the track or release the needle, pull it over where it's easier for me to get at from over here instead of having to crawl under it, put the new one in, and now I know how to put buttons to push on here where this will go back to the stitch that I left off on. I may have to do a little fine adjusting, but there's controls for that. And away we go. So that used to be a panic for me. No, not worried about it at all. Or if the thread just breaks, and it will happen. And that's the other problem. Thread. Will it break? Oh yes. Oh yes, it will break. And you won't know why. I had that problem recently. I was pulling my hair out. I spent 2 bloody days trying to figure out why my thread kept breaking. And I thought it was because I was using a variegated thread, and I hadn't really used a variegated thread before, although it was Fantastico by Superior, which was recommended by my APQS dealer. And she uses it all the time without any problems. I thought, well, what am I doing wrong? I went on YouTube. I watched videos. I went through the manuals, which I said the manuals don't help you much. I thought, okay, I rethreaded the machine. I cleaned the machine again. I started playing with tension. Tension is scary. At least it used to be. It's not scary to me anymore. I understand how to adjust tension. But I was playing with the tension, both the upper tension on here, this is a tension dial on here, and the bobbin has a little screw on it, and that's tension too. Now, I don't recommend you play with tension, but sometimes you might have to with it. That didn't do anything. So I took the spool of thread with me to talk to my APQS dealer, to Tracy, and she took one look at the spool of thread, and she says, problems with the spool of thread. She says, that doesn't look right. It looks like it's been wound improperly. Not my fault, not her fault. It was the way it came from the factory. She says, here's another spool of the same thread, same color. Take it home and try it. Guess what? Worked like a charm. Didn't have any problem whatsoever. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? But in the process of trying to solve that problem, I learned a lot about tension and other things as well.
Including how tense you were getting.
Yeah, well, Lucey and I had words, but we're in love again right now. So, yeah, rethreading it. Threading it is not difficult. At first it looks a little intimidating, but no, once you've done it, you've done it. You know, but it's not any more difficult to thread a long arm than to thread a domestic sewing machine. So, what will happen with this? Well, I'll finish this up, as I said, because I'm going to be cutting this up to make bags, little bags and things like that. And this will take this probably, for this little pattern that's on here, probably an hour or so to finish up, because it's a very small piece. But anyways, is there anything you want to ask me that you think people should know right now? This is an update on Lucey.
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. I've sort of interjected when I thought I needed to.
Well, of course you did. There are other things I want to do with Lucey in the future, and I'll make videos about them. I want to try piecing a quilt on Lucey using scraps. There are people who do that. They make scrappy quilts from strips or from pieces. It can be done, and it looks kind of interesting to me. It's sort of like a quilt as you go kind of a process, but on a long arm. I have seen people applique using their long arm. That doesn't appeal to me. To me, that seems like a lot more work than what it does to take you to applique on a domestic sewing machine. But people do that as well. So there's all kinds of other possibilities. It's not just making quilting more convenient. Oh yeah, one other thing, basting. You never have to get down on your hands and knees on the floor and get out your pins and get out your spray and for basting. It all sits up on here and you baste it as you go. It is so much easier than how we usually baste a quilt if you don't have a long arm. So I figured that in itself is worth the price of a long arm. And you know what I mean. Any of you that are crawling around on your hands and knees, you know, I can get down on the floor to do it. I just can't get back up, which is a problem. So anyways, do I love my Lucey? Yep. I love her more than I loved her when I first got her, because I understand her better. She and I have had a meeting of minds. Will there be problems in the future with Lucey? Oh yeah, because it's just like any machine. You know, it will give me problems, but I think I can figure out the problems, at least most of them that I've had. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting. And yeah, we'll come back and revisit Lucey another time and maybe talk a little bit more about Quilt Path as I get more comfortable with Quilt Path. And yeah, but bottom line is I do not regret spending the money on Lucey. It was a good investment. So I hope you have a good week. Walter's behind the camera. So we'll say goodbye, and not sure when you'll see us again.
Yeah.
But it will be out west probably at that time. So, okay, say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.